Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining. We know that people are joining all the way from Singapore even and the US. One of our speakers is logging on from the US, which we really appreciate because it's very early there. And yes, my name is Pascal. I am working at Wiley as their senior director for content protection, taking care of like anti-piracy initiatives and brand protection initiatives. And today I brought with me two very distinguished gentlemen. I'm going to start with Jos Westerbeke. Jos is an expert on authentication, single sign-on, access, and identity management. He has a technical IT background and works as an IT demand manager at Erasmus University Rotterdam's library. And he has acquired in-depth knowledge of e-resource access, with which he oversees and manages resource access and tools for all digital content providers of the library. And one of the problems libraries face when setting up SSO is that they need a common standard or recommendation that libraries and publishers can refer to. So with this in mind, Jos co-founded FIM for All, which is Federated Identity Management for Libraries. So Jos, welcome, and thank you very much for joining. And then we have Dan Ayala. He dialed in from all the way from the US. Thank you, Dan, for being with us at such an early point in time for you. Dan is the founder and managing partner of Socratic, a strategic information security and privacy consultancy focused on helping companies protect data and information and be prepared for any kind of incident, cyber incident. Throughout his 25-year career, he has led security and privacy organizations in banking and financial services, pharmaceutical, information, higher education, research, and library organizations around the world. And he writes and speaks regularly on the topics of security, privacy, data ethics, and compliance. Dan hosts the Great Security Debate podcast as well, and co-founded Mentor Core, a community focused on helping people in the security, compliance, and risk professions to grow their careers. Now, from the conversation that we will be having, it will become clear that there's so many aspects to discuss around this topic of, further collaboration to strengthen our defensive measures and systems that I don't think we will have enough time to go through all of these questions. But, I asked the organization, and I'm very thankful for, providing us with this opportunity. I think we have heard in the previous sessions a lot about COVID, about, making a sort of a digital transformation, because I think those are two main reasons why we may be seeing an increase in cyber attacks, right? It's not only about the fact that everybody's now working from home and remotely, but also the fact that a lot of businesses and organizations are transforming all their services and publishing systems and delivery systems onto clouds and digital environments. So one of my first questions for you, Jos, let me start with you. Why are we so special? Why are the complexities that are unique to this ecosystem different from other online ecosystems or businesses or industries? And what are the differences from a threat actor perspective and a mitigation point of view? Jos.
Yes, so universities at least are schools. So I think we have to provide some room for trial and errors, and we have students. So we have to provide some space, some like kind of sandboxes or something, to use. And what's also very special, I think, is that the universities are connected to each other, but also researchers work often together across different institutions and use all kind of authentication to access resources. And as from the library perspective, I see that libraries use many of this kind of resources, kind of platforms. We connect many platforms, to provide scholarly information like journals and ebooks, etc. So, yeah, there's a lot of things to do when it comes to security and privacy.
Thank you, Jos. And staying with libraries for a moment, Dan, what's your view on this? And if you then draw on your experience also not only in working with libraries, but banking and some of the other institutions and organizations you work with, what are the differences that you are seeing in addition to what Jos has already said?
There's the university and it being such an open environment and one that encourages such collaboration on top of being basically a city. It's running such diverse set of services. You don't see the word mandate show up a lot inside universities like you do in business, where something can come down and say, this is the way we're going to do it. In the interest of academic freedom, in the interest of collaboration, universities don't have that. So when it comes to securing things, the approaches are often different by part of the university, the approaches to doing it. The collaboration across institution means you can't necessarily take a single answer and apply it to everybody. And you've got all of the services, as I mentioned before, it's basically a city. Everything from hospitals and police departments to teaching and research, and that requires a lot of expertise, across a lot of different areas, and not necessarily with all the funding needed to do so to the level we'd all like to do.
So you both mentioned, the complexity relevant to audiences that we need to cater to, and I'm assuming the threats that apply to us as well. From our previous conversations today, we learned that complex situations may just remain like that, and there may not be a lot of things that we can do. On the other hand, there are items on people's wish lists if they would have unlimited budgets and maybe could do more as a result of that. But very specifically, if we look at other industries that may have already implemented like multi-factor authentication, things like email and text message verification, device and IP verification, even I think scanning of pictures and IDs and all those things. Are those extra measures, and I'm referring to the fact that in a previous conversation it was said that better identity management was required. Is that feasible? Maybe Jos, you can answer that first in a world where we also need to take into account the privacy of our users, right?
Yes. So yes, federated identity management is a great tool, I think. And we can use it. And right now we can configure this in the right way. But that's also the point we have to watch, whether it is configured right. And that's a concern. When I speak for libraries, we have many resources we have to provide access to. And when you speak about security and privacy, then those two are coming hand in hand. Better security will provide could provide better privacy. But as a library, we are concerned about privacy issues. So it's not always that a better security will give a better privacy. So that's a bit difficult for us.
Yeah, so here we need to find the right balance, I guess, as well, right? Dan, what is your view on this?
Oh, without question. And there's been this perpetual pull to do more security, often means reducing some of the privacy or the perception of privacy, to look at more packets, to look at more, more attack vectors as they come through the network, means you have to look. And the basis of the library is rooted in the idea that you can come in, take a book off the shelf, read it, close it, put it back, and no one ever needs to know you're there. And in the digital world, it's not technologically feasible for you to do it with no breadcrumbs. So now we have to move into, levels of trust and levels of controls that make sure that the things that are left behind are used in a way appropriate to the library, that the library, the lines with library ethics and values, but still making sure you take due care to protect the institution as a whole. And that requires some pretty good discussion between IT between campus technology and campus information security and the libraries, and then coming together and having a common conversation with the suppliers, to the technology suppliers, to make sure that they're acting in the way that is in line with both the university's needs from a security perspective, as well as from that of the library, the privacy needs of the library. And it's not an easy thing to find the balance of.
No, and it's very interesting, because now you've mentioned sort of the need for collaboration within the ecosystem itself, right? The academic ecosystem itself. Personally, I used to work for, I think much like you, for various different industries. I think software and gaming and music and movies. So when we talk now specifically about cross-industry collaboration, so outside of our own realm at the moment, is that something you would recommend? What are your experiences with that? Are there, best practices that we can borrow from other industries that may have gone through certain issues already? What is your view on that?
Yeah, and I think it starts at home, though. And having been on both sides of this particular equation, having been the chief information security officer for a large research university here in the United States, as well as having been the chief information security officer for a content company that supplies libraries and researchers, I think the perspective I have is that starting at home, starting inside the institution and building that strong relationship is really imperative in order to, there's so much that these groups have in common today, and the attendees of this conference as information security professionals and technology professionals, there's way more that we have in common with the people in the university library and in the research community within the university than we've ever had before. So it's a great opportunity to bring those groups to if you don't have a strong relationship with the library, with the research groups, go out and build those, because together then you can have some common direction to go outside. I think looking at other realms beyond research is interesting for information, but as I mentioned, in the idea of academic freedom, the idea of the collaboration that exists inside a research university, is very different than that of consumer services like movies, like music, like other content providers, and it provides some different challenges. We can learn from them, but I think it's not a one-to-one match.
That's great. It's always good to hear that we're unique, right? So thank you very much for that. Jos, same question for you, actually. I mean, I assume that establishing this whole federated identity management for libraries is a daunting task, especially when it comes to collaboration. What were your experiences in the past when having to sort of realize that type of collaboration?
Yes, so, collaboration with the IT department as a library and IT department, it's very important. As libraries, we are used to do authentication based on the IP address. So when I say this in 2022, that we do authentication based on an IP address, then the IT department are looking at us and, what are you doing? What's that? That's even not authentication. We need to do it in another way. So yes, and we can do it in another way, but indeed, we have to talk to each other, to collaborate, to work together for the right solution. And there is a solution. We can connect the resources with federated access, like using your single sign-on screen from the university. But the university does have to secure the identities we have. And the library use the identities for providing access to all that kind of resources. And the resources reside by the publishers worldwide. So, so the treasures are at the publisher side. They have to protect it. On the other side, the library side, we have our users, and we have to protect our users. We, as a library, we have a very beautiful principle that we have to provide freedom of research. So there must always be a possibility to authenticate anonymously. As a student or a researcher, there must be a choice to choose to access your stuff, what you will read anonymously. Mm-hmm. So we are concerned with that. The IT department is more concerned with security, and we more with privacy, and we can enable it, but we have to collaborate.
Exactly. That's such a beautiful example of, the different aspects to that same ecosystem and different interests and expectations, I guess, right? And that determining the possibilities that you have. So Dan, clearly, IP verification is like from the Jurassic age, I guess, right? Listening to Jos. When we talk about tools specifically, I mean, there are a lot of vendors coming to us saying, if you use our tool, all your problems will be solved, right? And sometimes one also thinks, well, isn't it only about expertise and what you do with the tools rather than implementing something and walking away from it? So when specifically talking about methods or to increase or enhance the identification that Jos was referring to, but maybe also the intrusion detection process, what are your thoughts in relation to that? What can be done within our space to enhance that?
Well, I've spent 10 of my career years, of my 25 years in information security focused on identity. And I think the idea, this move toward, as Jos mentioned, toward federated identity on campus is a great move from improving security. It also improves accessibility and it makes people have a predictable set of processes. The other thing it does is it is putting more, while it brings more things under one identity, it also makes that identity even more valuable. In many cases, over the years, people would have multiple logins to multiple different systems, and they might place different value of importance on that particular resource, on that particular login. And some would share it. Some would share it with others in order to gain multiple people access to it, or give it to a friend, or give it to to a cause. Now that is coming back together and you see one login that manages your HRIS system, as well as access to library resources, as well as, if you're faculty, access to grade platforms. Now it's becoming much more personal and much more valuable if you do give it away. And therefore, people are less inclined to give it away because there's personal impacts. Layer onto that the two-factor authentication, and it's a much more robust way to gain access to the university. Security professionals will be very supportive of this. Now, the question is, how do you take and make that into something that's in line with what the privacy needs of the research community of the library? And there are technologies from Easy Proxy. OCLC has a product called Easy Proxy, which is an industry standard in the library, which is now putting things through called a pseudonymous identifier, which lets content providers, upstream users of the upstream suppliers of things to the library, be able to understand the actions that are happening on the system, but without knowing that it was Daniel Ayala that took the action. So we can start to abstract out the personalness from the action, which means that the publishers can do more around protecting content. The universities can get better signals back from outside systems to say, we think these user accounts have been compromised. And the university, of course, because now it has so much more access than ever before, will want to make sure that those are, will be very happy to take that information and force those accounts to change passwords, reset, and come back under the control of the user.
Thank you so much. Jos, one question for you. A while ago, I was asked the following question, and that was whether the academic sector should be labeled as a critical infrastructure. And the whole sort of rationale behind that was that, in the past, other sectors like banking and, airports and public transportation and, even the healthcare sector had been designated as a critical infrastructure. And the benefit of that being that other entities can offer more support, like government, right? And enforcement bodies, and that there may be more funding for protective measures. Now, how do you look at something like that? Would you say that the academic institutions all form like a technical, critical cyber infrastructure that deserves more protection? Or would that be too complicated right now, considering, you know, the balancing of all the interests that you refer to? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, good question. I think when we speak right now about identities, then yeah, you know, the education ecosystem is a very huge system with, and it's all is about identities, students and employees. We have to deal with many identities, and it's a huge network when you speak about federated identities, because you are going all over the world and it's all connected to each other. So in that sense, it's, I think, an important network, important to protect it. And yeah, of course, perhaps the government can help us. They also have to deal with identities.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Dan, what's your view on that question?
I think categorically, absolutely yes. The you know, watching the research community through COVID really demonstrated the importance of the research that's happening in universities. The fact that so many of the discoveries were coming from research, the methods for detection, the methods for reducing impact, studies on those that were affected, and understanding some of the long-term outcomes, all came through university research. And therefore, you know, the importance of that science to the community really does mean that it's critical infrastructure. It's not as easy to pin it and say, you know, this is a physical road or this is electrical supply, but that research. And then you layer on information security research, cybersecurity research that's happening inside universities as well, across the world, that we are seeing, you know, significant amounts of that strategic research come out. I think absolutely there's this is the information that comes out of the university sector is critical to the ongoing success of the science of the world, as well as the information security of the world, and a lot more.
And do you have the feeling that the outside world is sufficiently aware of that?
I think it's increasing. Mm-hmm. I think it's increasing as we, again, the last 2 years have made a lot of people aware, because you start to hear the sources of these research. In many cases, you know, scholarly research is made, it gets published and is viewed by other people in the scholarly research ecosystem and not necessarily wider. But because of the significance of the research and the pace at which the results were coming out over the past 2 years and the way that it was referenced in the public, I think there was a lot more focus on it than ever before. So maybe it's not, you know, there's still lots of room to grow in this. But I don't think that, I think people are much more aware of the value, the research value that comes out of universities now than they ever have been.
Understood. So Jos, back to you. And this is going to be an interesting question for you. This is your opportunity. It's similar to what I actually learned in the previous session. If your budget would be unlimited, Jos, what would be on your cybersecurity wish list?
Enabling collaboration with each other, talk with each other, with different universities, I mean, and see what we can do together, and looking for some kind of policies, so to say, how to approach things, how to proceed with security measures, etc. Yeah. Kind like that.
Still very modest, I think. I'm assuming you're in touch with a lot of your counterparts, maybe in the Netherlands or outside of the Netherlands as well. What's your experience there? Do you feel that other countries or other universities or other libraries are dealing with the issues you've mentioned, which are super complex, in a different way or better way? Or actually, do they have more difficulty in getting to the point where you are right now in relation to your network security? What's your thought about that?
Yeah, about network security, I think we are taking kind of the same steps right now as we have done with our university in Rotterdam. We implemented multi-factor authentication for the employees, and students are coming. So that kind of steps for security are, I think, very important steps, and I see that also with other universities in the Netherlands and perhaps worldwide. So that's what we can do right now, and we have to do this kind of things. So there should be budget for it.
So there's, both a learning process when you look around you, but there are a lot of, I think, things that people can learn from you. So again, I invite everybody to, reach out to Jos after this session if they have any questions. And the same applies to Dan. Dan, the question for you, you have been able to compare all these different sectors. Nobody has an unlimited budget. But if that would be the case, where do you think people should invest in when it comes to the issues relevant to libraries and the academic sector?
I think robust identity management is a great first place to start. But I think in addition, it's also just as important the relationships that exist. Spending time and focus on the relationships between security and the rest of the university. And there's no single way to paint that approach, but it's about investing the time in the relationships and understanding what they all do. And we've made significant inroads as a security profession to move away from being the people that just say no to things, and reminding or making sure that people across campus understand that is the position, that it's how do we get you to be able to do the things you need to do to achieve the mission of the university. As far as other things, I think implementing methods of detection and response that do take privacy into account. So, I'm working on logging platforms that separate out the identity from the action, looking at things like differential privacy in broader implementation across the university, collaborating across university to look at attacks and try and detect things even earlier. There's great opportunity for information sharing that is happening. It's a long tradition in the security realm that we talk a lot to each other about the things we know, but continuing that and growing it, because the universities, just as much as we provide significant amounts of research and significant amounts of value, we're also significant targets, and that means that the more we know and the more we talk to each other, the better off we'll be.
That's a perfect sort of bridge to my final item that I wanted to put forward to you. This is about what you would recommend as a sort of final suggestion to all of our viewers today. From my end, my recommendation relevant to this topic would always be, don't be afraid to discuss problems, first of all, and don't be ashamed to do that. I think we should all find mechanisms to share what's happening to us, right? I think you're very well versed in like ISACs and things like that, right? To exchange information about threats so everybody can respond very, very quickly. Both for you, Dan and Jos, in this order, what would you have as a final recommendation for our audience today?
I think I'll continue on the idea that we are about getting people getting parts of the university to the answers they need in order to do the things they do, not to not do the things they need to do. And this has never been more important as funding, as grant funding and university funding are based on the ability to do these things. And so, spending time trying to figure out good ways that find balance. Because as we as security professionals know, the only secure system is one that's turned off and locked away and wiped and disconnected. And that's not of much use to anybody. So we have to come off that end. And then the same thing on the privacy end, on the other end of the spectrum, it's very easy to say the only private system is one that's not actually providing any service either. So we have to find a place in the middle, especially with libraries, that meets the library's needs, that meets the research community's needs, but also enables us to protect the university adequately. And it takes a lot of discussion and it takes a lot of understanding on both sides to come off the edge. Thank you so much. Jos, final seconds for you.
Yeah, I think we should invest in associations, national associations like we have as libraries, but also universities, and also international, work together. We're sharing the same problems, and we could perhaps make a same kind of policy, how to act, how to configure all things. So yeah, looking that we can do for things we can do together.
Thank you so much. Thank you to both my distinguished guests. We really appreciate it that you found the time to join us today. You know, like I said, this just flew by in a split second. I'm handing it back to Jeremy, but I'm sure that these discussions will continue in the future.